Developing shipping trade routes was important for local commerce, and in 1897 a Swede called Johan Karlbom set up a company in Grimsby, which is still going strong today. Karlbom Shipping moved to Immingham Docks in 1912. The company was responsible for the import of Baltic timber and the export of coal. Today, his great-granddaughter Camilla runs the business, though it's not changed much since John's day.
I think the aims and the ethos of the company are very much the same. It's to offer a fantastic service, it's to put your client first and look after all of their needs and represent them on the Humber, because a lot of our clients back a century ago as well as today are international, and they need somebody they can trust and rely upon to look after their vessels when their vessels come into port in the UK.
John Karlbom arrived in England from Stockholm to make his mark in shipping. Over the years, he gave much back to the people who had adopted him, including the treasured boy with the leaking boot statue in Cleethorpes.
My great-grandfather, when he arrived in England, he arrived with more or less nothing. And he built a business in Grimsby. But he was able to build that business because of the people he worked with here in Grimsby. So he always felt a need to repay and to thank Grimsby and Cleethorpes for the opportunity he had been given. And I think it was very much a very strong social ethos. Maybe that's a little bit of the Lutheran characteristic. And so he was very keen to say thank you. Into Cleethorpes, which is where his first home was that he bought on the seafront on the Kingsway, he gave a statue that he thought was very charming from a place in Sweden, and he had it copied and brought over, and that's the boy with the leaking boot. And I think he was very surprised and very touched that it became so popular, and it became a sort of a symbol for Cleethorpes. But also he was very keen on history and building links, and he wanted to establish a museum in Grimsby, a fishing museum. He bought an old church in which to put a museum, but he couldn't get anybody interested in it. And now Grimsby has a fishing heritage museum, but a century ago nobody was interested. But I think it's marvellous that he wanted to give so much back. And the first motorised ambulances, I think he gave a couple to Grimsby. And those were the days when it was still a horse and cart. And he saw the need for motorised ambulances. So I think it was, quite extraordinary.
John was also for 42 years the Swedish consul for Grimsby and Immingham, an honorary position passed to his son Edward and then to his grandson Anthony, Camilla's father. It's a role Camilla has also taken on, and she's consul for Sweden and Finland.
As a consul for both Sweden and Finland, you might get a variety of requests, but the bulk of what we do is administration, issuing, not doing the passports, but handing them over when they come from London. In the old days, we used to stamp them and do the whole process, but nowadays modern technology has taken over. And a consul will issue proof of life for pensioners so they can get a state pension from Sweden. You might hand over or be the agent for the registration of a newborn child or marriage certificates. So it's very much an administrative role on the one side, and on the other side it's your role as a networker.
At the heart of it all, the Karlboms have been there forging trade links, and this is as important today as it was when the founder arrived.
I'm chairman of the Humber chapter of the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, and essentially the Chamber of Commerce is based in London, and it's a very active chamber. I think only the Americans do more in London. So the Swedish Chamber is very active, and they have a couple of chapters, and we have the Humber chapter. And in that role, we're trying to develop this year a wider network. So we formed a committee of local companies like DFDS, SAS, Handelsbanken, and Volvo Cars to get together and promote Scandinavian companies here on the Humber. We have an annual dinner, and we're going to organise some other events as well and get greater input and network and showcase what this region can do for the Swedes or for the Danes, for the wider Scandinavia, and likewise extend our knowledge and invite Swedes here and trade to Sweden. So both sides.
Camilla's Swedish heritage plays an important part in her family life too. She likens her spoken Swedish to that of a tourist, but is proud of her forebears' country and is still traditional.
There are a lot of Swedish traditions that we just love. Because we're here and we're quite isolated, those traditions become very important. Santa Lucia before Christmas was always a very special time in our household when everybody dresses in white and you put a crown of light on your head, and special foods and treats. So Christmas celebrations, Easter celebrations, and where possible we always like to go back to Sweden for midsummer and to visit in the summertime. But I think you do, and I think it's so important to hold on to those Swedish traditions and let your children know about them. And I think it gives them a broader sense of the world too, so they know there are special things on the other side of the North Sea that they too should learn about.
As trade links continue to be forged in the present day, Camilla is confident in the future of the Humber estuary and the role Kaalbom plays.
I think change takes time, but I think the Humber estuary is developing. It is becoming more important as an energy hub, and that I think is maybe a change away from not just trading, not just import and export passing through the docks, but building business here and jobs for the renewable energy industry, whether it be more emphasis on the biomass, on the offshore wind. This region is in a fantastic position to benefit from new technology and developments in offshore wind power and onshore a little bit too.
Camilla worked in the media industry before taking over the reins of the family business, something which she knew would happen, but found herself going into it quickly following the death of her father.
When I came back to Grimsby after many years away, I always knew that I would be coming back here. I knew most of the clients quite well. I was very familiar still with the region. But the timing was quite sudden, so it's definitely a very steep learning curve, but it's such a thrill to be back here. I mean, it's just a wonderful place to raise a family, but there is the added pressure of taking over a very historic family business and learning the ropes in a hurry, and really getting down to make sure you continue the business to the next generation if they're interested.
With the strong love for Scandinavia at the moment, Camilla believes everyone should explore it.
For a long time, we only had Volvos, Saabs and ABBA. That was the Swedish export. Now Sweden, it's one of the great generators of music, and it's house music, all kinds of music, culture, design, and now Nordic noir.